What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, last night we had an update around The Last of Us multiplayer from Naughty Dog, and unfortunately, not really the update that Last of Us fans were hoping to hear, but we'll dive into all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sega, as some recent filings may give us some ideas as to other older intellectual properties that could be making a return next to things like Jet Set Radio. And also, we did have that Grand Theft Auto Trilogy release on Netflix for phones, and somehow these versions may have turned out better than that console trilogy. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button, helps that a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Hideo Kojima and a big time announcement that probably isn't surprising anyone based on his track record and clearly his aspirations when it comes to film and TV, as we can see this posted up over on Gamatsu. They say Kojima Productions has announced a collaboration with A24, the studio behind Academy Award-winning films such as Everything Everywhere All at Once, to adapt Death Stranding into a live-action feature film. It says the film will delve into the mystery surrounding the apocalyptic event called The Death Stranding, which blurred the lines between life and death and brought forth nightmarish creatures into a world on the brink of collapse. So if you play Death Stranding, you know there are a lot of plot points, a lot of storylines kind of interweaving there, and you meet a lot of characters along the way as Sam Bridges, but you kind of look at the world and understand there are probably many ways they could go about this, rather than just say, okay, get Norman Reedus in and we'll basically do Death Stranding the game, but as a movie. I think there are a lot of interesting things they can build out from this world. And yeah, Death Stranding for many people might be better off as a movie or a series, since the gameplay is just you delivering packages. But the lore itself, I feel like, is interesting and probably can confuse people on the big screen like it did on their PlayStation 5s. Also, with just a couple of weeks left for holiday shopping, it does look like the Xbox Series systems have gone on probably the steepest discount I've ever seen, reaching some pretty low price, like all-time low prices. Now, Microsoft has made it official that on their website, the Xbox Series X is down to $400. However, I have also seen other retailers listing it for roughly $350, and at times that's the Diablo 4 bundle. So then you think, okay, Diablo 4, like that would place the Xbox Series X below $300 for the console and controller, which is ridiculous. However, there is another deal that's going in and out of stock and just promotional status, and that's for the Xbox Series S. Looks like it's a Fortnite bundle, but it was being posted up at a price point of $138. Now, again, it's kind of bouncing around of being in and out of stock with that promotion applied. Otherwise, it's just over $300. But keep an eye on that one, because that is impressive to be able to get a brand new Xbox Series S with some kind of Fortnite crossover currency in the game, what have you, but still $138 for a Series S. Very, very impressive there for that price point. So if you're still looking for one, keep an eye out for some of those deals, because they are popping up quite frequently. I would follow like Wario64. They seem to post it pretty much constantly, and then of course it goes out of stock right away. Oh, and while we're on the topic of discounts for games, let's talk about free games, as the Epic Game Store will be doing just free games throughout like the holidays up until apparently January 10th, and they're looking to give away 17 different games. Now, you do have to use the Epic Game Store launcher, which I know for some people is a deal breaker, but you just download it and sign up and you can start claiming games right now. In fact, the one they have up, which you can see over on their page, is actually Destiny 2 Legacy Collection. To my understanding, it comes with 3 different expansions here. You also need the Destiny 2 base game, but that is free on the Epic Game Store. So you put both in your shopping cart there, you check out, and they'll be thrown right into your library of games. It's Destiny 2. These aren't exactly like, this isn't like a brand new game or anything, but maybe you're getting a PC for the holidays or a ROG Ally for Windows, and this is just something you could add to your library now. And of course, we have another one coming up, it says in about 5 days. So we'll check back in and see what that is. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sega and their big push right now, their big initiative to bring back some of these dormant intellectual properties, and I assume try to make another pillar that would go alongside of Sonic, Like a Dragon, and Persona. We know Jet Set Radio seems to be the big one on their radar right now and probably is their big focus to try to create a fourth pillar, but technically it could be any of these other games, whether it's a Shinobi or it's a Crazy Taxi or different Streets of Rage, and they said and more at the bottom of that card when they were going down the line of all the different franchises they were bringing back. And that's why when you start to see filings happen that have games alongside of these already revealed titles, it does make you wonder a bit. For example, this is over on Gamatsu, where they noticed a string of trademarks. So they have Altered Beast, Eternal Champions, there's Jet Set Radio, which we do know was shown in that trailer, and Kid Chameleon. Eternal Champions does stand out to me right away, although they're still trying to figure out how to get, apparently, Virtua Fighter to come back. Eternal Champions, that was a very, I guess you'd say, technical fighter back then. I remember that was one that was way harder to pull off moves compared to when I was playing Mortal Kombat. It was much easier to do stuff there, but Eternal Champions was a very unique game, a unique fighter at that time. Anyway, we did have some other trademarks that popped up as well later on in the day that was posted up by Gamatsu. This includes Alex Kidd, Afterburner, there's Crazy Taxi, House of the Dead, which you've already had some House of the Dead releases come out, actually. Outrun, Shinobi, Streets of Rage, Super Monkey Ball. There are rumors going around right now that a new Super Monkey Ball game could be coming out next year to go alongside of, and this is kind of hard to believe for me, but Jet Set Radio, I don't know, Jet Set Radio, a 2024 game. I kind of feel like that one might be in development just a little longer. 2025 I have on that, but like, thinking of Outrun, like Sega mentioned Outrun before with investors, so that's a game that I actually think will come to fruition sooner rather than later. I'm trying to figure out what something like a Alex Kidd would look like right now, but definitely something like Eternal Champions or Altered Beast, trying to alter that and make a bigger game, more modernized version of that. I don't know what that would look like either. I think that's the reason this is very exciting to a lot of people. One, you have obviously older properties that we remember from your childhood at that time, right? The 16-bit era. And two, we can't really picture these games at this time and what they would look like currently. Like Golden Axe was a weird one to hear about, and then you see it and you're like, well, could work. Probably needs some more time to figure things out, but okay, they at least have an idea there, a visual style to go along with that. But like Altered Beast is an interesting one. So something to keep an eye on here with all these different trademarks. Yes, they're trademark filings, but something tells me Sega is going to be using quite a few of them in the coming years. Next up, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. These, of course, give us a look week to week at video game sales in Japan. And in this case, we do have a milestone that I wanted to call out here. But first, let's take a look at the top 10 for software. At the top with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, had a pretty big surge there of 33% up from the last week. Coming in now at 1.2 million copies sold. Momotaro Tensetsu World is at number 2. Dragon Quest Monsters then at 3. Pikmin 4 is the one I wanted to point out. That came in with 26,879 copies, which was enough to push this game over the 1 million mark in Japan alone. And these would just be physical over-the-counter sales. It jumped up over 100%. Which is interesting, but I mean, we're going into the holidays now, and this is around the time where you would see peak sales at retail for things like this. So Pikmin 4 cruising along there, already the best selling game in the franchise. It just continues to pile on. Then we also have Super Mario RPG coming up on 400,000 copies in Japan actually already, so pretty good stuff there. Final Fantasy VII Integrate, it's a new price edition. Okay, it's on the PS5, 14,000 copies. Then we have WarioWare Move It, Minecraft on the Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Moving over to the hardware, the Switch is at the top, 92,776. Impressive stuff there. Obviously, since we're finishing up the 7th year of the platform in March 2024, and it's still moving nearly 100,000 systems. Again, holiday time, but I mean, they're at 31.5 million systems sold. You feel like they'd run out of people to sell to, but I guess they're not. They are down year on year, but not by a lot. Definitely not by an amount you'd expect in the 7th year. The PS5, 44,166. Then we have the Xbox Series at 2,508, with the PS4 close behind, 2,179. And then, wow, 16 3DS is still managed to sell somehow here at the end of 2023. But yeah, the big highlight I would say is Pikmin 4, and it just shows that that franchise has gotten stronger and stronger, and does make me wonder what the future looks like there. Obviously, I figure another game probably sooner than it took for something like Pikmin 4 to get out there, and probably could turn into a big franchise for Nintendo maybe to count on. So exciting stuff there for Pikmin fans. Next up, let's talk about The Last of Us Online, with the multiplayer that Naughty Dog said was originally planned to go into Last of Us Part 2, but they continued to build on it, and eventually it just kind of turned into its own thing, and they made the decision to separate it from Last of Us Part 2 and continue to work on it. And in fact, it was sort of being described as their big live service game, right? That was the idea, and it sort of sounded like they were going to maybe go, I pictured, like a Division route, sort of. Well, we know that there have been issues behind the scenes, and in fact, at one point it was mentioned that Bungie did internal reviews, and even, I guess, suggested, we'll say, that this game, this multiplayer component for Last of Us Online, just kind of got put back in the oven, needed some more work. Specifically, it sounded like for live service elements, post-launch support. Well, it appears Naughty Dog has made a decision, and they released that on their website, which we can see this statement. From the top, they say, we realize many of you have been anticipating news around the project that we've been calling The Last of Us Online. There's no easy way to say this. We've made the incredibly difficult decision to stop development on the game. That's right, it's done, it's over. The Last of Us Online is essentially canceled at this point. They do go a bit more in depth than I was expecting to explain why this was the case. Say the multiplayer team has been in pre-production with this game since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2, crafting an experience we felt was unique and had tremendous potential. As the multiplayer team iterated on their concept for The Last of Us Online during this time, their vision crystallized, the gameplay got more refined and satisfying, and we were enthusiastic about the direction in which we were headed. In ramping up to full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we'd have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games. So we had two paths in front of us: become a solely live service game studio, or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. We are immensely proud of everyone at the studio that touched this project. The learnings and investments in technology from this game will carry into how we develop our projects and will be invaluable in the direction we are headed as a studio. We have more than one ambitious brand new single-player game that we're working on here at Naughty Dog, and we cannot wait to share more about what comes next when we're ready. Okay, so there's a lot to take away from this. Clearly, Naughty Dog, looking around at, they say, their ambitious plans for this Last of Us Online, looked and said, hey, we're just going to become a Last of Us Online studio if we go forward with this. Kind of like how Bungie is basically a Destiny 2 studio. I know they've announced Marathon, but up until this point, that's all they've done. And it's all been after releasing Destiny 2. And if, say, Naughty Dog had to just pull everyone together just to support this game post-launch, you wouldn't have, I guess, a Last of Us Part 3. You wouldn't have whatever their new intellectual property is that they are working on right now. In fact, those are the two games I believe they're referring to here. So that's kind of where we are. They get the fork in the road, and they go live service or single-player, narrative-driven experience that we know we're good at, and we don't really have to take a risk on. Last of Us Online is a risk. It just is. And them spending that kind of time, those kind of resources on it, could end up sinking them if maybe people get bored of it or they hit a rough patch with it, kind of like what's happening right now with Bungie and Destiny 2. The other element to this is I wonder if Sony is having some second thoughts on this live service push. I don't necessarily want to look at this and line it up with Jim Ryan exiting, because I legitimately think he's just retiring outright. Like, he's been there a while, he's getting older, probably has a lot of money, he's good. So I kind of do wonder, though, if Sony in general is looking around saying, wow, the live service stuff, not really going how we were planning necessarily, so Bungie may have been a wake-up call after they saw the revenue numbers and how they fell like 45% below expectations, and now thinking, oh, we're gonna have to probably take over Bungie. what are we doing with Naughty Dog and having a live service game be their sole focus? Let's pivot. Let's allow them to take the other side of the fork in the road and create their narrative-driven single-player experiences that we know work and we know generally sells consoles and sells copies and makes PlayStation unique from the rest of the marketplace. With all this said, though, massive misstep for Naughty Dog. They should have just had a more basic multiplayer component to Last of Us Part 2, similar to just factions in Last of Us when that came out on the PS3 and then was, of course, moved up to the PS4 through the remaster port. I feel like that timeline, things I think would have gone a lot better overall, and there's a chance Last of Us Part 2 may have just been received better as well because there would have just been that extra bit of content, that extra mode that some people could have put their focus on more or less. There are people who buy Halo, never play the single player, just play the multiplayer, and there's a chance that could have happened with Last of Us Part 2, and maybe that's something, as they mentioned, they take away from here. Maybe Last of Us Part 3 has a smaller multiplayer component to it, similar to factions. They don't try to build this huge live service type game, and that's kind of what I hope they have in mind. But yeah, as of now, Last of Us Online, this big ambitious project, the thing that kept multiplayer out of Last of Us Part 2, is canceled. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about that GTA Trilogy that released on Android and iOS through Netflix. Now, this is already kind of a weird situation because it's like, okay, Netflix is adding games to their service, which they even have like Death's Door. I didn't realize that until I opened up Netflix on my phone and went to the games category. So they have some other pretty good games in there. But the thing that's very interesting about GTA Trilogy, that of course has 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, these were not developed by Grove Street Games. In fact, it was a whole other studio that apparently did these ports, I guess. And I took some footage for Vice City, which you can see some of it here, just kind of the opening part, some of the cutscenes, and I attempted to move around and drive. Not the greatest with a touch screen, but the studio that did this was Video Games Deluxe. People have been going through this and realizing something. These mobile ports look better than the console versions that we got from Grove Street Games. And I haven't played all the way through the games, obviously, nothing like that. So I can't tell you if it's glitchy or messed up at certain parts compared to the console version. I will tell you, you're going to want to sync up a controller. That's the biggest drawback for these mobile phone games. A touchscreen just is not it. Like, you need a controller, you sync it up, you use it on an iPad. I'm sure this could actually be a pretty good experience because it would basically be like having a little TV right in front of you with your controller and you'd play it right off of a battery. So you can just play it wherever. Now, you can also buy these games separately on the different app stores. I believe they are $20 each, so $60 for all 3 of them. But if you have a Netflix account, you can just download it right now, just outright. So, I don't know, interesting benefit, I guess, if you have Netflix like I do. Just check it out and see what you think. But it's funny that these seem to be in better shape just overall than the console versions we got. But 2, it is genuinely impressive just how far we've come with mobile phones outright. I know we see things like Resident Evil 4 or Village or what have you on these mobile chipsets, but even it sounds weird because these were on the PS2, but just thinking back to how I first looked at GTA 3 or Vice City or San Andreas back then, and now thinking it's on a cell phone with better visuals, better shape than the console versions, and these have existed on phones before, but these have certainly seen quite a few refinements, touch-ups, visual upgrades. It's impressive stuff to think of kind of the timeline of like games, evolution across different platforms, the whole thing. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, which you could see is Game of the Year Madness. Day 25 pitted Final Fantasy 16 versus Dead Space. Final Fantasy 16 looked to be taking control, and I think it's going to end up running past Dead Space here. So I'd say pretty big outing so far for Final Fantasy 16. The next matchup coming up, I mean, look, Ghost Trick, it technically won its first matchup, so you know it is going up against Baldur's Gate 3. We'll see how that turns out, but yeah, we could have a pretty big matchup here in the next round then, or the next side of the bracket, with Final Fantasy 16 going up against Baldur's Gate 3. That could be fun. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Raf, who says, actual smart people who don't alert Nintendo of their presence before releasing an impressive hack or fan game are a rare commodity. these days. Yeah, this is definitely the strategy. If you're creating a fan game or just some sort of port even, or even a decompilation, there's always the risk that if you announce it, basically before it's done, Nintendo will come after you, they'll find you, they'll cease and desist it, they'll get it pulled down. In this case though, even if Nintendo did that now, so many people have downloaded this thing, and I'm seeing mirrors pop up all over the place for the EXE because it's like 24 megabytes, so it's pretty easy to distribute out there right now online. It's very difficult to erase this thing from the internet. And in fact, it's still up on that website. So I'm actually a little surprised Nintendo hasn't come down and at least tried to strike down the original source page for this thing. But yeah, this is how you want to go about it. Don't say anything until it's all done, ready to go, and then just drop it and see what the internet thinks. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's this big push from Sega for these older titles from the past. Which games would you like to see them bring back that they already have not announced? And then also, what about GTA Trilogy? Did you try it out on your phones? What'd you think about those? And The Last of Us Online has now been canceled. Do you think this is the right move for Naughty Dog? And are you hoping that they just go full-on single player from here on out? Don't even try to touch the live service stuff anymore. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.